Welcome to the slightly new Being Bookish. No, I am not changing the logo or the fact that I talk about books without spoilers, but I am going to try something a little bit different when it comes to the book reviews. I'm going to give you a bargain, two, for the price of listening to just one episode. I'm sure you know that I don't just read one book a fortnight, though this month it certainly has been a little bit closer to that than usual. So I want to talk about two books rather than one. Does this mean I am going to give you any less? Absolutely not. The first review is going to be as detailed as ever, without giving major plot spoilers away. I am just going to be adding a second, shorter review into the mix. A book that I truly loved and think that many of you would probably enjoy. Though in the case of this week's book, perhaps not so much enjoy as love because of the depth of plot. Anyway, less of that. Let's get on with the chunky review for the fortnight. This week I am taking a visit to a world where the Greek gods rule, where once every 100 years a tournament is held to determine which god will rule for the next century, and where humans are expendable. We're entering the crucible and our contender is out to win for the unlikeliest of gods. Let me introduce you to Lyra Kerys and the world of The Games Gods Play by Abigail Owen. I'm Ray, an unapologetic bookworm, introvert, self-confessed hermit and long-time depression sufferer. This is my quiet space to share thoughts as I make my way through an ever-growing to-be-read pile. Join me as I explore stories one book at a time, well, in this case two, with 100% honest and completely spoiler-free reviews. I have to be completely honest here. I can't even remember why I went searching for this particular book and ended up purchasing it. I think I likely spotted it on BookTok or maybe Bookstagram, and when I discovered that despite its apparent popularity overseas, it wasn't available in the UK unless imported, I still bought it and subsequently convinced both my boss and another reading friend to buy it so I would have someone to talk to about it. Yeah, that's me, Ray the Book Enabler. Welcome to my world and enjoy the stay. It'll be fun, I promise. The gods love to play with us mere mortals, and every 100 years we let them. I have never been favoured by the gods, far from it, thanks to Zeus. Living as a cursed office clerk for the Order of Thieves, I just keep my head down and hope the capricious beings who rule from Olympus won't notice me. Not an easy feat, given San Francisco is Zeus's patron city, but I make do. I survive until the night I tangle with a different god, the worst god, Hades. For the first time ever, the ruthless mercurial king of the underworld has entered the crucible, the deadly contest the gods hold to determine a new ruler to sit on the throne of Olympus. But instead of fighting their own battles, the gods name mortals to compete in their stead. So why in the underworld did Hades choose me, a sarcastic nobody with a curse on her shoulders, as his champion? And why does my heart trip every time he says I'm his? I don't know if I'm a pawn, bait, or something else entirely to this dangerously tempting god. How can I, when he has more secrets than stars in the sky? Because Hades is playing by his own rules, and death will win at any cost. Purely because her mother dared to go into labour in Zeus's sacred temple, Lyra Kerys was cursed at birth. The curse meant no one could truly love her, leaving her emotionally isolated throughout her life. She was sold to the Order of Thieves at the age of 3 and raised among them in modern-day San Francisco. There she worked as a meticulous clerk, bound to rules and routines, keeping her distance from everyone around her. As the gods prepared for the next crucible, a brutal competition they hold every century using mortal champions to fight through a series of labours, Lyra's life was thrown off course. During the opening ceremony, she was humiliated and, acting on years of buried resentment, nearly desecrated Zeus's temple. Discovered before she could create any mayhem, she doesn't realize that she is sealing her destiny, catching the eye of Hades, the most mercurial of the gods. Believed to be mourning the death of Persephone, his beloved, but from the moment Hades and Lyra meet, there is something there, though what it is, who can tell? Instead of being punished, Hades saves her from making a big mistake and then declares her his champion in the Crucible, an event that until now he has never shown any interest in taking part in. Lyra isn't at all keen on participating until Hades offers her a deal she cannot possibly refuse. If she wins for him, making him the king of the gods for the next century, then he will remove the curse, giving her the chance at living a normal life. Lyra accepts and is taken to Olympus to train for the upcoming trials. Although distant at first, having grown used to being constantly rejected by those she would like to consider friends, she begins to develop fragile connections with the other champions, including Zai, who is Hermes' champion and the son of the last winner of the Crucible. Under Hades' guidance, her skills as a thief are honed, and she learns to fight and survive the tests that are part of the competition. Each of the gods, excluding Hades, who is an unexpected entrant, set a trial for their champions, and it's not just the prize of ruler that's at stake. These trials are deadly. The champions have been selected for their skills, and while the prize is their greatest wish become reality, the cost could be their lives. The Crucible begins with a trial, a hunt for hidden tokens that test the champion's wit and nerve. They must find this token symbolizing their patron in order to move on to the next round. The first trial shows others that Lyra doesn't truly understand she needs to be in this for herself, as she discovers what they are all searching for and starts to help everyone find their own tokens. Furious at her interference and feeling it's unfair that she's giving others an advantage, Ares shows his anger and destroys Lyra's token, forcing her to use her inbuilt resourcefulness and seek an alternative so she can continue. This first trial is closely followed by one set by Poseidon, involving icy waters, bindings, and deadly sea creatures. As Lyra attempts to help her fellow competitors, one of them dies and Lyra is deeply affected by the loss. They may not trust her or view her as a worthy champion, not aided by the combination of her curse and the fact that no one wants the god of death to be the ruler of all. But likely her biggest weakness is that she can still feel affection for others when it's not returned. During Hermes' trial, Lyra and Zai work together to solve riddles along a cliffside under extreme pressure. The connection between them grows, though Lyra remains cautious, reminded repeatedly by Hades that she should be suspicious of others as they, too, want to win. Having been warned not to trust anyone, Lyra's resolve is again tested when Aphrodite, intrigued by Hades' champion, offers her relief between challenges. Of course, she declines the offer, but it leads her to question the true games the gods play. In Aphrodite's dreamlike trial, Lyra has to find and rescue the person she loves the most. There are moments where you do start to question who that will be, especially having seen how close Hades and his champion have become. However, in her vision, someone from the Thieves' Guild is her beloved, Boone, a man she has had a crush on for a considerable period of time, but due to the curse has never shown her any interest in return. During the challenge, she finds out that while Boone doesn't love her, he admires her skill, and she learns more about who he is as a person. Their closeness deepens, and she learns a lot about how she is perceived by those who brought her up, thanks to everything that Boone shares with her. Hephaestus, once husband of Aphrodite and the god of blacksmiths and fire, is in charge of setting the next trial. His challenge is one with violently dangerous, bloodthirsty clockwork warriors. Though Lyra survives the trial, she is in a near-death state for several days, injured by one of the automatons. To save her, a distraught Hades, showing again his affection, gives her some of his blood and water from the river Styx, a risky move that could kill her. Of course, this does prove his growing attachment, though his reasons for wanting to win have not changed and remain as mysterious as ever. When Lyra wakes, she discovers that the trials have continued without her, at the wish of the gods, all of whom would have preferred that Lyra didn't survive. This means that it will be almost impossible for her to win and lift her curse. Lyra's drive is fueled by her need to feel love and acceptance from the people around her. She has never known affection from anyone thanks to the will of an egotistical god punishing her for events outside her control. Her anger at Zeus and his actions before she was born, coupled with the knowledge that her own family abandoned her and is unwilling to accept responsibility for their own failings, is enough to push her to do everything she can for someone who has shown her just a modicum of affection. Of course, this isn't the full story. There are some trials still to go, but to reveal them and their outcomes would ruin absolutely everything for anyone listening who does decide they want to pick up the book. You're probably absolutely sick of hearing me say how I am honestly not here to influence you. If you like the sound of a book I've raved about and end up purchasing or borrowing it, then that's great. But reading is incredibly subjective, and I know that every single reader is different. This is never more apparent than when I check out reviews of well-loved and popular books that I personally haven't enjoyed, such as the ACOTAR series, or less-known books that I didn't want to put down because I couldn't wait to find out what happened next, such as The Raven Scholar, which I read recently and I know will end up in my top 5 of 2025. In every episode, I try and provide a balanced perspective of the books I'm talking about, which is the reason why I often spend quite a long time, in some case hours, reading through reviews from other readers across multiple platforms. Though by this time my opinion is already formed, that doesn't mean I should just say, I think this book is amazing, read it, or I think this book stinks to high heaven, don't bother, and leave it at that. What I love, others may find awful, and what I dislike could well end up being one of your favourite books of all time. So now I've given you a summary of the main plot without spoilers. Let's take a look at some reviews from other readers. Valerian Reader, who, judging by their username, is a massive ACOTAR fan, really appears to have loathed everything about the games gods play, reluctantly awarding it 1 star. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. It should be criminal to make even Hades boring. Hades? Finishing this was borderline Sisyphean, and that's a better mythology reference than what exists in these brutal 631 pages. I endured it all rather than DNF, so I could fully endorse the following warning. Don't be wooed by gorgeous edges. Don't allow the high ratings to fool you. Save yourselves from the 47 million uses of my star and the ever-impactful prose such as even my shivers have shivers. It's giving a first effort at AO3 gone abysmally wrong. For a bit I thought maybe it was aiming for campy, but alas, I fear not. One-dimensional characters, dialogue that's painful, understatement of the century, pacing that's nonsensical, and stakes truly nowhere in sight. Please don't get me started on the how could a man possibly be attracted to me, the person who ticks the box of every manufactured standard beauty, manic pixie dream girl. I simply can't stop humming. Status of the FMC. It's all a ner from me. Rating: cartwheel into Tartarus over this. Given the tone of this and a number of shorter reviews declaring the book a DNF and therefore a 1 star read, I was surprised that there weren't more. Not because I feel the book deserved it, but because those who did dislike the book and felt it was only worth a low star rating really didn't like the story, the characters, or the writing style at all. On Goodreads, the overall rating for the book is 4.14, and on Storygraph, it's just a tiny bit lower at 4.08. Reading through the reviews, it's clear that many chose the book for the same reason as me, a love of mythology. The game's God's Play came out in September 2024, at least in the US and Australia. So far, I have been unable to find out anything about a potential UK release date, but I would be interested to find out if this will change now that Penguin has launched their own Red Tower imprint in the UK, with the first book published under the new umbrella being the greatly anticipated Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry, coming out at the beginning of July. In fact, I received a notification that mine is due to ship incredibly soon. At the moment, the book has 64,593 ratings and 9,719 full reviews on Goodreads and 10,472 reviews on Storygraph. As I hadn't heard much about this book, the number of reviews and ratings available actually surprised me. In her 5-star review, Jenna acknowledges that she's probably not the most objective when it comes to this book, given her enjoyment of Greek mythology and her love of the trial trope that this book and others like it have employed. She said, "I can admit that this isn't an objective 5-star read, but subjectively, I really loved it. And honestly, despite having some overdone tropes, I think it's really well written. I have been reading a lot more recent releases this year than I normally do, and quite frankly, a lot of them have really disappointed me. A lot of books this year have felt incredibly generic, yet carried themselves with a rather pompous tone. We get it. Everyone wants to be the next Fourth Wing. This book, however, has done some really original moments, and more importantly, sets the right tone. Going into the game's God's Play, I knew that even if other elements fell flat, the premise and overarching story were going to do it for me. I enjoy a good mythological retelling, and I love books with trials. The first few chapters of this book did drag a little for me. I didn't love the banter, and everything felt a bit awkward. However, shortly in, it felt like the author got her footing, and as the book progressed, I started to really love it. The trials were exciting, well-paced with a lot of them, and very well thought out. I really enjoyed reading each one, and all of the magical objects and gifts that accompanied them were really cool. The characters were quite well written as well. As Lyra made allies and friends, I found myself really invested in their relationships. I also thought the gods were well written in a way that impressively accurate to the original myths, with grey morality. The only thing I wanted a bit more from was the romance. I liked Hades as a character more than I expected to, but I wanted a few more scenes of him and Lyra together, as their getting together felt a little bit rushed. I will say, however, the romance felt more earned than in some other recent releases I've read. Not everything was just sex and tension based, there was real character work. And lastly, I think this book was quite well constructed. The final twists and explanations made sense and were provided at the exact right moment. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. As mentioned, I think what made it stand out to me is the tone. This book knows what it is. While, yes, it does have some grounded character moments, as a whole, it's a fun adventure, and it treats itself as one. This book never tries to convince you it's the next great American novel, and honestly, I find that to be quite refreshing. Right, now I've mentioned what everyone else is saying, here's what I really think about the game's God's Play by Abigail Owen. No spoilers, just 100% honest. Did I like the book? On initial read, after spending hours sinking into the story and enjoying the tension building between Hades and Lyra, I gave the book 4.75 stars. Now, that doesn't mean that I thought it was without fault, because not every book can be absolute perfection. What it does mean is that when I finished it, I was left wanting more. I want to know what happens next. If I tell you that it happened on a knife edge, I wouldn't be spoiling anything, because there is a sequel coming out at the end of September this year, which reveals it at least isn't a standalone novel. I am a massive fan of the whole Greek mythology retelling genre. I have always loved Greek mythology, and while I would usually say I am a purist, I have enjoyed books that adapt the tales of the gods and introduce us to new perspectives on their behaviour in different situations that cannot be tied to the mythological adventures with which they're normally associated. Wow, I sound like I'm writing an essay for my old degree. That's what this book does. We aren't on Mount Olympus witnessing Hades trick his beloved Persephone into consuming seeds of a pomegranate, or Aphrodite initiating the actions that will start the Trojan War by gifting Paris the most beautiful woman in the world. We are in a slightly altered modern San Francisco where the people are living in some sort of mishmash that has merged ancient Greek society and some elements of the modern day that we're familiar with. Through the eyes of Lyra, our lead protagonist, I learned a lot about the capricious nature of the gods. She, more than many, has a good reason for disliking Zeus and trusting no one who promises her anything that sounds too good to be true. Slowly but surely, Hades does his best to earn her trust, while also ensuring that she is aware he is not a good man. This is, in itself, enough to make you like him. But then you see that he, like Lyra, is isolated. He is not trusted by his fellow gods because of his role as the god of death, which is not the role he would have likely chosen for himself. His siblings push him away and treat him as though he is not worthy of spending time with them. This is reason enough for the bond he has with Lyra to grow stronger, even while he is doing his best to ensure that they don't grow too close. He has a secret he is keeping from her and knows that if she does discover the truth, it will possibly alienate her forever. And like it or not, and he would never admit it, he actually needs her. I absolutely loved the way that Cerberus was portrayed. Yes, it was cheesy and completely ridiculous if analysed in too much detail, but it was very much a case of don't judge a book by its cover when it came to this overgrown three-headed hell dog. 3 separate personalities, gruff, friendly, and dopey, and all of them endearing. I acknowledge that this was a little bit on the unusual side, and if he'd had a larger role to play in the book, I would likely have grown increasingly frustrated with him and the comedic relief he was clearly designed to provide for us. There is a time and place for characters like this, and he was used enough. While she was taking part in the trials, not only did we learn a lot about Lyra and the skills she had developed while a clerk in the Order of Thieves, but we also saw her learning a lot about herself. She is someone who likes the playing field to be even. She doesn't like it when others have an unfair advantage and don't share it with those who are struggling. This is both a positive and a negative, especially when your very life is at stake. But from the start, you can see that despite knowing she is the underdog, she still goes out of her way to help others who would just as soon see her fall to her doom. This is a noble characteristic. Yes, though there were times when I was reading and I did grow frustrated with her. It was as though she couldn't see what was right in front of her eyes. She even goes out of her way to help the very person who would happily stab her in the chest to get an advantage in a trial. Though Lyra only takes part in 7 trials, the popular theme of the hero's trial is definitely present. Whether it's the 12 labours of Heracles, the trials of Psyche, or the trial that Atalanta set for her keen suitors, this is a common thread in mythology. To show that the hero or heroine is worthy of love, money, a throne, they are set a number of tasks and they have to succeed in all of them to get the prize. This crucible is no different. though they are ultimately fighting for the honour of a god wanting more power over mortals. Lyra is the embodiment of the cursed mortal. A child unloved from birth and abandoned at a young age is on a journey to right the wrongs done to her by a merciless god. In many ways, this reflects the pain and suffering experienced by characters including Cassandra, Sisyphus, and Medusa, all of whom suffered at the hands of a god feeling vengeful, whether it was because they were defiled at the hands of another god or denied something they wanted and felt they were owed. Hades, in this book, he has to be mentioned, is like nothing I have seen before. And I've read a number of Hades novels. He has elements of the emo that I have grown used to associating with his darker goth character. I am still, admittedly, waiting to read a book that has the darker, less salubrious side of this character as we get in the original Hades and Persephone myth. Another book I would love to read. I know that in this book we are meant to see him as a somewhat appealing potential love interest. Perhaps another shadow daddy, a mix of Rhysand, Xaden and the Darkling from Shadow and Bone. I guess in many ways Hades is the original shadow daddy, though in this book I don't think we quite make it. For some reason, I didn't read this and immediately think, ooh, romance, despite there being blatant similarities in the snarky way that Lyra immediately starts to speak with Hades, and the way he doesn't blow up at her for her lack of respect. I am not going to say I automatically hated any hints of romance, because who doesn't want that imbalance to build into true love? Notice the sarcasm? Anyway, I did enjoy the fact that it was a slow burn and we saw the relationship build from intriguing glances to something more. Despite my dislike of slow burn romance in novels like When Gracie Met the Grump, and I am open and honest when I admit that I really don't like Zapata's style of slow burn at all, I feel that this story actually benefited greatly from not being insta-love and having our leads jump into the nearest bed together the second the opportunity arose. I probably don't need to spell this out, but I am going to anyway. I did enjoy this book, and I do have the sequel, The Things God Break, on order. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful sprayed edge edition, and I'm not mad at that. If you enjoyed the games Gods Play or want to read something similar, try these. When I was shelving my books a long time ago by micro-genre, I discovered that I have a considerable number of novels with a Greek mythology focus, as well as Norse, Celtic and Roman. Admittedly, the majority are a take on the myths as originally told in Hesiod, Homer, Euripides, Sophocles, and many others. Most, including Circe, Clytemnestra, Ariadne, the Penelopiad, and Stoneblind, are female, feminist interpretations, giving the women in the stories the voice they didn't have when written by their original male authors. I also noticed that I had collected a few novels with a basis in myth that were using the gods and their mortals differently, including Lore by Alexandra Bracken and 3 books in the Hades X Persephone saga by Scarlett Sinclair. Though, I have to be honest here, I have yet to do more than read a few pages of the Sinclair novels before I decided to reshelve them. I will probably go back to them at a later date. I know that a lot of people really love them. If you're looking for mythology books, I do have a very long list, starting with the ones I have already mentioned. And if you're looking for something that handles Greek mythology a little differently, then perhaps the Lore Olympus graphic novels by Rachel Smythe, which are incredible and beautifully illustrated, Lore by Alexandra Bracken, the entire Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan, or Lies We Sing to the Sea by Sarah Underwood. Of course, if you've got any more recommendations, please do let me know, because this legitimately is My Roman Empire. Right now, I would normally be talking about my reading for the last couple of weeks. But my need to tell you about this one particular book I read is what triggered my decision to change the format of the podcast. Though I again will stress, just a little bit, I promise. The Names by Florence Knapp does not come without its warnings. This book ripped my heart out, stomped on it multiple times, and then put it back in, battered and bruised, leaving me crying for several hours. A book that asks and answers the question, would a rose by any other name smell as sweet, against the backdrop of events that take place between 1987 and 2022, as they occur for one family, and the son who was given 3 different names in 3 different story strands. I remember, personally, the storm of 1987 happening as it did on the eve of my grandmother's 58th birthday. That's the moment when this story starts for Cora, Maya and Gordon Atkin and their, at that moment, unnamed son. Suffering in silence in an incredibly abusive marriage, Cora is going to register her baby son's name when she considers breaking the damaging cycle of the name Gordon. And the book follows the 3 strands of their son's life. In one strand, he's Bear, named by their daughter Maya, a warm, cuddly young boy whose life has the potential to be filled with love and laughter. In another strand, he's Julian, the name Cora wants for him, a gentle, loving boy whose life follows a different path. In the final strand, he is named for his violent father, Gordon. Always seeking approval, he sets his own path, but is forever living in the shadow of his father and the horrendous acts he commits against his wife. Each life that is lived is beautifully written, emotional, tragic in ways that I cannot begin to tell you. This is Knapp's first fiction novel, and I have to be honest when I say that I sat on my balcony for hours as I read this, and I didn't care that I was crying as I read about the experiences these characters lived. I heartily recommend this book. It was my second 5-star read of the weekend in a considerably disappointing period of year. And I don't give many 5-star ratings that are true 5 stars. Read it. Soak up the beautiful writing, the incredible depth that these characters were given, and prepare for the tears. Though be warned, this is not my normal recommendation or my normal read. Walk forth with caution and be prepared for the emotional pain you will go through with The Names by Florence Knapp. Well, that's it for this week, and thank you so much for listening. If you're enjoying the show, why not share it with friends or family and leave a star rating, please, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you might listen. You can find me on Instagram at beingbookishpod, on X at being_bookish, and on TikTok at beingbookishreviews. Prefer reading? Head to beingbookish.co.uk for spoiler-free reviews, my 2025 reading tracker, and all the links in one place. Until next time, this is me saying farewell.